make sure that when you're putting out an email, number one, it has no impact if the person doesn't open it, read it, and absorb it. Has no impact. You didn't do any you didn't communicate. And
Right.
so there are a lot of people. You can think of some people in your life that when you see their name pop up in your inbox, you're there, oh no. Ugh, I don't want to open that. I don't know how long it'll probably be another 10-page tirade, and I don't really want to wade through it and try to figure out what he's probably. So an email, a really good email, is formatted in such a way that when you open it, you want to have a reputation such that when people see your name pop up in the inbox, they go, oh, good.
Welcome to Rochester Business Connections, powered by Balbert Marketing, LLC, where I get the chance to chat with Rochester, New York's very best business owners, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders. I am your host, Ben Albert. Don't forget to subscribe, and remember, we don't do advertisements. My fee for this show is simple. If you gain value from the episode, personally share with a friend and explain your favorite part. Let's get started. Welcome everyone to Rochester Business Connections. I am here with Bob Whipple. Bob, how are we doing today? What's up?
Very good, Ben. I'm feeling well and looking forward to our discussion.
I am too. Bob, you are the trust ambassador, owner of Leadergrow, and simply put, you help people develop trust, right? And what is more important in a business relationship than trust? So I'm so happy to have you here today, published author of 4 books on trust, and I hope you do most of the talking because I've got a lot to learn. But
Well, I'll be happy to address any of the topics that you want to talk about.
Sounds great. Sounds great. Let's just talk about trust then. And how did you get, into the field? Obviously, you weren't born and said, "I'm going to be the trust guy when I grow up." I can't imagine. What's the story that brought you into a place where you are now, the trust ambassador?
Well, it came from my fascination with leadership all throughout my life. Even when I was a young boy, I was really quite fascinated with the idea that there are some people in this world that are quite effective at leading others. And then there are other people that try hard and they don't seem to be able to make it happen as well. And yet from the outward appearance, they would appear to be the same. So I kind of was fascinated, even at a very young age. I can remember in the Cub Scouts and kindergarten and stuff like that, being fascinated with what is the magic sauce here that makes really good leaders be able to connect with people and be able to make things happen. So I observed a lot, but I don't think I learned a lot by observing it. Just kind of fascinated with the topic. And then when I got a little bit older and started to get into high school and college and stuff, I started studying it a little more seriously and read a lot of books, tons and tons, probably hundreds of books on leadership, and lots of. We used to watch tapes and cassette tapes. Remember cassette tapes? I
Yeah.
listened to hundreds of those things on leadership, and began to study it in earnest. And when I graduated from college, I went to work at Kodak and had a 31-year career in manufacturing at Eastman Kodak Company. Lots of different positions, but mostly in leadership positions. So it gave me a really good opportunity to begin to practice some of the things that I'd learned and read about, and see and experiment myself with what was effective and what was not effective. And I created, sort of halfway through my career, I created what I called a leadership laboratory. So what I did was I went out and I recruited the very best top people in leadership that I could find in the corporation and brought them onto my team, and had this little nucleus of people who were very passionately studying leadership and learning from each other every day. And so I learned lots of things not to do and learned some things that are quite effective. And so we had a lot of fun doing that. And as I began to reflect on my lifelong learning on this late in my career, so let's say about 5 years before I left Kodak, I began to synthesize some of the lessons about leadership, and then began to do affinity diagrams to try to figure out what goes with what and what's more important than what and whatever. And ultimately, through a bunch of machinations, I came to the conclusion that the central hub of leadership is trust, and that if you are a leader and you know how to build, maintain, repair trust, then you have an incredible advantage, because all the other things that you have to do as a leader work like magic. But if you have a problem with trust, if you don't understand what it is and how to get it and how to maintain it and how to repair it, then you struggle. You try all the other things. You try to be consistent. You try to reinforce people. You try to do all these things rather frenetically, and you're not really very effective, because you're missing the center hub of the whole thing. So that's how I came to. And when I left Kodak, I decided to spend the last 25 or so years of my productive life giving back and helping to bring along other people that are interested in leadership. And so that's kind of what I've been doing.
It's incredible. And in those 25 years, you've worked with a lot of big name people. You've published 4 books. I know this is a silly question because we should read them all, but if I wanted to begin, learning more about trust today, what book should I start with?
Well, I'll take you through a quick water ski through the 4 books and describe what they are. The first book is called The Trust Factor, and this is all about how trust works in an organization, and what trust and leadership, the link between leadership and trust, is described in this book, and how you get it, and those kinds of things. So that's my first book. Second book is quite uh, diverging significantly. This is a book about communication and the idea that we are communicating more online now than we ever had before. Over the past 20 years, it's just become so much ingrained, and yet probably very few leaders have actually had any formal training on how do you communicate effectively when you're working online. So I wrote this book called Understanding Body Language, the body language that goes on in electronic communication. There is a lot of body language there. You can't see the other person usually, but the body language is in between the words, and in how you use your pronouns, and how your sentences are structured, and how the whole thing. So this book is about how to communicate really well and maintain and build trust when you're working virtually. Then my third book is probably the most famous one. It's called Leading with Trust is Like Sailing Downwind.
Mm.
And this is a book that shares the notion that if you are smart enough to configure your world such that you have high trust, it's like sailing with the wind. You're going much faster. You're not tacking back and forth and trying to do all the fancy stuff. You're just getting there faster and easier, because and so this came from a study of maybe 60 different CEOs, and I discovered that CEOs who focus on building a really strong culture of trust have more fun. Leadership is a ball. It's a blast
Mm.
if you do it with the correct culture. And if you don't have the correct culture, leadership is hell. It's awful. it's stressful. It's you got to say everything just right, or else they're going to pounce on you, and it's like it's very, very defensive. So I was amazed at the difference, and said, I want to be one of these guys that does it right, because then life is a lot easier and more fun. And then the last book I wrote, this was in 2014, called Trust in Transition. And this is all about the fact that when organizations go through major transitions, I specifically refer to mergers and acquisitions as examples, but it's also the case for reorganizations or anything that really structurally changes the way people interact with each other in different teams. Okay, and quite often, I would say almost the majority of times, it's a bumpy ride. Trust takes a huge hit when you're trying to mesh two organizations together.
Mm.
And so I said, it doesn't have to be that way if we can set it up from the get-go to focus on not just all the mechanical things, because most leaders, when they go into if they're going to do a merger, they're doing it from the MBA point of view. They're doing it with understanding the valuation, the negotiation, all the, asset stuff, and making things happen, and almost a second thought to how are we going to get these people to mesh well together and work well as a unified team. That comes later, and that's the huge mistake. So what I lay out in that book, A Trust in Transition, is, hey, if you start out with the idea that you have to give the culture, the end result culture, equal billing with all the mechanical stuff, then you can be more successful.
I love it. I love it. Bob, I need to read the books. You're obviously a wealth of information on trust, Western New York's top source on trust. And I wish we could go over everything today, but, you know, I'm sure the listeners at home are all thinking the same thing, because a lot of them are business leaders in the community. They have teams. Every one of them has customers that they want to build better trust with, trust in their relationships. We all need trust in our lives ultimately to be the best people at the end of the
Mhm,
day. So at a
mhm,
very higher level, 1,000-foot view,
mhm.
where do I start? I'm looking to start building trust today, and I know that I can't, become completely different species overnight. What small steps can I start today to build trust in my business relationships and build trust with the people that I meet every day?
Okay, well, let me take you to a screen and a couple of slides that I have that kind of describe a little bit of the core material that are in some of these books that
Great.
may be helpful. So I'm going to do this and go here and share. Okay, this is building trust is not rocket science. We know how to do it. I've listed here 16 things, but if we took the time, we could at least list 50 or 100 ways that we go about building trust. Very simple. Do what you say, treat people well, tell the truth, demonstrate respect. On and on they go. And we know all these things. And so I always puzzled over the fact that if we know, if it's not that rocket science and we know how to do it, how come in many organizations, I would say most organizations, we don't do it very well?
Right.
Why? Why?
Mhm.
And I've discovered in my work that there are four foundational things that need to be in place to make these other things work. And those four foundational things, let's see, I call them the foundational behaviors to build trust.
Mhm.
This is what you have to have underneath all those other behaviors. And if you do and you understand what these four things are and you can practice them, then the magic happens. And the first one is what I call the first law of trust. And that is that trust is a reciprocal phenomenon. It happens between people, and it goes in both directions. And it's not the same in one direction as it is in the other direction. But so the overarching rule here is that if you're a leader and you see and you're not satisfied with the level of trust that you're seeing from other people, the first thing to think about is how do you show more trust in them?
Mm.
Trust is reciprocal. If you want to get more trust, you need to extend more trust. And you need to find ways to do that. Now, sometimes people aren't trustworthy. So you say, I can't do that because this person isn't trustworthy. You can still find some ways to extend trust and begin to build that up. And that's the first thing to think about. Rather than trying to change the other person to become more trustworthy, find ways to extend more trust in that person, and they will almost always reciprocate. So that's the first foundation. The second one is this phenomenon of values. I think most organizations have a set of values that they've wordsmithed and worked on. Usually I think the optimal set of values is between 4 and 6 short values, not big long statements or anything, but just a handful to grab onto and say, this is what we passionately believe in and this is how we act. And then the trick is, when I do this, I work with leadership teams all over the country, and as soon as we get the values for what this team wants to espouse, I will turn to them and say, now, if these are your values, being totally honest, will you tell me that you always follow the values? And I get this pregnant pause
Right.
because when they think about it, and then they think about it and somebody will finally blurt out, well, we try, which is precisely 100% the wrong answer. There is no try, like Yoda said. There is no try. It's do or do not. And so the idea is, values do you the most good when applying them or modeling them is difficult. When it's easy to model a value because of the way the conditions are, the particular situation, you just do it. It's automatic. It's when it's expensive or is going to take a lot of time or is cumbersome or is going to set you back in some way other than that, but you have a value. And so therefore, you're going to do it. Let me give you an example so you can understand it.
Please.
So I know a CEO who runs a construction company. He builds buildings, factories, and things like that. Okay, and so he's going along, and at one point, some engineers in his company, the people that design these buildings and stuff like that, discovered that a building that they had constructed about 15 years ago, so it was beyond the warranty period, had used the wrong schedule of drain pipe underneath the concrete floor. That is, it was too small, and wasn't up to the code. Okay, and they discovered this. And the engineers said, yeah, but we've had a lot of bad storms in the last 15 years, and the place has never had any problem. It's never backed up. There's never been any issue. The customer's not even aware that there's any problem there. So let's just let it go. It's out of the warranty situation anyway, so let's just let it go. And the CEO stood up and walked over to the wall and pointed to their third value, which was integrity. If we believe in this value, we have to fix that problem.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, but that's going to be it's going to be disruptive to the customer. They're going to have to move their machines out. We're going to have to chip up the concrete. We're going to have to go in there with backhoes and dig it all up. And for what reason? It's working fine. Let's just leave it alone. He says, that's the value that we have called integrity, and we're going to fix it. So they went and it cost them $40,000 to fix that. But that's when values do you the most good, because people see that and they recognize that, okay, we mean what we say, right?
Massive.
So that's when if you understand values at that level and can practice them. Most organizations, when you go into the lobby of a company, quite often they'll say they have a value, generally number one value or number two value will say, people are our most important asset. Oh, that sounds great.
Right.
The problem is when the market goes soft, they don't sell buildings and sell off inventory. They lay off people. So people aren't their most important asset. They prove it time and time again. So if you have a value, if you have a value of people being your most important asset, when the market goes soft, you train your people and get ready for the next cycle. And if you have to get money, you sell a building. Very different behavior. So that whole concept on values is huge, and that's where the rubber meets the road. The third one is what I call balanced accountability, and that is simply that accountability is a huge issue with trust in most organizations. I do surveys all the time, and generally accountability is a thing that gets in the way of trust, of a culture of high trust in an organization. And so the reason is, it's a very simple reason. In most cases, most organizations have accountability as a punitive concept. You did something wrong, and I'm going to hold you accountable. It's even the way we word it, hold you accountable, is a negative statement.
Right.
So therefore, accountability gets if I'm going to be held accountable today, I'm oh gosh, that's not a happy conversation. But there's a better way to do it. I have a model that teaches people how to hold people accountable. They're responsible for what they've signed up for, and we don't let that go. But we do it in a principle-centered way that maintains the person's self-esteem, lets the person know that the reason we're having this conversation is because I care about you deeply and I want you to be successful. And therefore we're having this something we have to change. We have to do better in the future. And so we don't let the person get away with murder or get away with things, but we do it in a way that upholds rather than destroys our culture. So those three, first law, the values, and balanced accountability, are the three of the four foundational. The fourth one is the big whopper. This one dwarfs all the other ones in terms of its impact on the culture. So when I work with leaders, I try to help them understand what this concept of reinforcing culture candor is. The idea is this: every leader of every organization has a button that he wears every day, or she, every day, that says, I am right on it.
I am right.
Because in reality, if we're thinking that this is a proper thing to do in this circumstance, it's gone through our filter of our brain and say, that's the right thing to do. I am doing what I believe is right. It's almost impossible to do what you believe is wrong. If you're a psychopath, maybe, or schizophrenic. But for most rational people, I just basically, I'm going around doing what I think is right. So therefore, if someone has a different opinion about what we should be doing in this particular case, let's say I've just decided that we've got to cut out overtime in our organization for the next month. Let's cut it back because we're spending too much money. Now, somebody comes up to me, one of the managers that's reporting to me, and says, Bob, yeah, I don't really agree with that's the smart thing to do here. And let me explain why. Now, I'm going to have a reaction in my body. It's chemical. It's going on in my brain. And it's basically adrenaline begins to flow. And I'm going to be coming at that person with body language like this, saying, let me explain
why I'm right.
Why that's the case, And so basically I find some ways to punish you for your candor. And so you're going to slink off eventually, because I'm going to win. I'm the boss. So, eventually, we're doing it my way anyway. But you're going to feel bad about it. And that destroys trust. That destroys the culture in little ways. And by the way, other people in the room see it happening and they go, oh, So therefore, what I teach leaders to do, by the way, what I do is if I'm in a room of 20 leaders, okay, I'll take the senior leader and say, you're wearing this button all the time. Well, I don't think so. Yeah, I think you are. But then what I do is I pass the buttons out to everybody. And I teach the senior leaders that when someone has the courage to speak up and say, I have a different opinion about that, he's being candid or she's being candid. And what you need to do is make them glad that they brought it up, not punish them. So it changes my body language. And this is hard to do at first, but once you see the results, it's easy to do, because what happens is trust just blossoms like crazy. Change your body language from this, like, let me explain to you what you don't understand, to this. Hey, I didn't see it that way. Let's talk about that. Explain to me why you're thinking that, because I saw it differently.
Mm-hmm.
See, it completely different body language, completely different reaction. And if I can teach the leaders, and this is what I teach the leaders, is focus on one thing. When somebody challenges something that you've said or done and said they don't see it like that, your number one thing to do is to, when that conversation is over, have that person say to himself or herself, I'm glad I brought that up. If I can do that as the leader, I don't lose control. I still have the ability to make a decision. And by the way, maybe I bring other people involved or whatever, anyway. But as long as the person that brought up the concern feels glad that he brought it up, then trust has increased in both directions. Trust in me and trust in the other person. And that begins a process by which the managers that are reporting to me as the senior manager get pretty excited. This is a better culture. This is a different culture. This is what trust is all about. And when they see it at their level, they go back to their teams and they start practicing it too. And within, if you can get this seed planted well, within about 6 months, you've got a whole different culture. If thousands of people can be, I've had an organization of 2,000 people, and we changed the whole culture of the place in less than a year.
Wow.
So that's the foundation. Reinforcing candor.
Now, we're all wearing that I am right button at all times. And I'm always curious, because obviously it's perfect in, a communication context. You want people to be able to say, hey, Bob, we value this at our company. You've always taught us that. And I believe that by doing this, we're going against our values, and making that person not feel nervous to bring this up, because it's the kind of thing that needs to be discussed in your organization.
Exactly.
But I'm wondering, as a leader, how can you be wrong gracefully? How can I accept the fact I'm wrong? How can I, be in heat? Maybe there's other leaders around me and someone's calling me out on something that I was wrong about. Is there a proper way to be wrong gracefully that makes everybody win?
There's all kinds of ways of dealing with it. First of all, expressing gratitude. Thank you so much for bringing that up, because I was not seeing, I sort of had tunnel vision on this, and I was sort of thought this was a no-brainer. But by you bringing up this concern, this idea that maybe that's not consistent with this value we have about not mousetrapping people or whatever the value is. I didn't see it that way, and I really appreciate your courage to say so, because that allows us to deal with it and objectively and investigate it. So I may ask, what do other people think about this? Okay, I
Mm.
may say, that's a really interesting concept. Let me sleep on that a couple of nights and just let it settle here and think about it a little bit, because I respect your opinion, and I'm glad you brought it up, and I'm listening to you. Okay, I still don't have I'm still not there where I want to reverse my decision at this point, but um, clearly I'm not ignoring you, and I'm not going to belittle you
Mm.
for your opinion. So just handling it that way, and not only am I changing the dynamic with that particular person, I'm changing the dynamic for everybody that's sitting in the room.
Yeah.
Everybody that's witnessing the conversation says, "Oh, okay, this is a safe place." It's called psychological safety.
I love it. I love that you mentioned gratitude. I mean, you're wrong. It's thank you for bringing this to the table and allowing us all to have a more progressive conversation for the better of the company. I appreciate it. And they can be completely wrong, and you can still show that gratitude that they have the confidence to come to you with something that's concerning them. Because have you seen situations, Bob, where someone, comes to the leader, they have a concern, there may be, let's say they're wrong, but I know wrong isn't as black as, it's not just right or wrong, but they're missing the mark somewhere. They could have a concern. It could be a more deep seated concern with the company or their role in the company that you wouldn't have been able to address if they never came to you with that concern in the first place, right?
Right, exactly. And what you have to realize is that there's a bell-shaped curve of all kinds of
Mm,
situations. There are people that are just obnoxious, and people that just want to be negative on everything. And so you have to recognize that there are ways that are inappropriate. So people say you're full of shit, or whatever. You get well, we don't use that kind of language, please. Okay, so in shaping behavior, um, you have to realize that every once in a while you're going to run into a bad apple. The vast majority of people, though, are reasonable. They're there to earn a living and to contribute. And so 99.9% of the time, you can shape behavior in a way that becomes positive. And for those that you can't, you need to find a different situation for them.
mm, sure thing.
When there's a trust betrayal,
Right.
here's the rule that I use.
Right.
When there's a trust betrayal, the first thing to do is to take a look at the magnitude of what the betrayal is, and there needs to be a confrontation about it. Um, the idea that you have to make a decision: is this relationship over? I can give you an example of a situation where I was there was a trust betrayal with happened to be a female manager reporting to me, and when I asked her about it, and she lied right to my face, and so
Mm,
that was the end of that relationship.
sure.
She had to find a different job.
Wow.
It's not most of the time it doesn't get to that extreme,
Right.
but you have to be alert that there are some jerks in this world, and you don't want to put up with it. If you're putting up with someone who is disruptive and always creating havoc and you're doing damage control almost every day with this person, and you can't coach them to change, then if you put up with that, shame on you.
Hmm. You're holding your entire company to a standard. You're holding yourself to a standard, your leadership team to a standard. It's shame on you if someone's ultimately breaking this rule
Yeah,
and you're not jumping in because they're a friend of yours or they're a family member or you think they're a pivotal part of the team. We're only as strong as our weakest link, right?
yeah. So you had, but leadership is not always easy.
Mm.
There are times where it's quite challenging, and that's when you go back to your values and you say, what do we believe in? How do we treat people? If our values are solid, and I go back and I search the values and say, how should I react to this situation? And it tells me what to do. And those are the moments of truth.
Yeah. Well, this has been great. Ultimately, Bob, you have 4 books for us to read, so there's plenty more we can learn about trust. I think I might start with the e-trust book, just because we're in a world where, whether it's our website, do you talk about face-to-face interactions like on a webcam, or do you talk about the way your website creates trust too? Or give us a little bit of a primer on electronic trust.
Yeah, that book, the e-body language book, was written in 2006. So that was well before this
Sure.
kind of communication was the norm.
Got it.
And so it's mostly about written
Mm,
electronic communication. Could include texting, um, but basically it's about stuff that is going back and forth on the email.
got it. Which is huge, which
It's
is
huge.
massive.
It's still
Yeah.
massive, and there's things that we don't recognize how subtle the rules. Let me just give you a couple of rules so you can get a sense for it. We establish the tone of an email by our use of pronouns. So the rule becomes, never start an email with the word you, because it puts the person on the defensive. Uh, this is subconsciously,
Mm,
subconsciously, the person's kind of, especially if you couple it with an absolute, you never, or
mm,
you always, right? So the person's going to be, oh, it doesn't matter what the rest of the note says. You've already established the tone of the note.
right.
And so the person is going to wade into that information with a jaundiced view, or with it's going to color everything else that you say. So what I try to encourage people is to make sure that when you're putting out an email, number one, it has no impact if the person doesn't open it, read it, and absorb it. Has no impact. You didn't do any you didn't communicate. And
Right.
so there are a lot of people, you can think of some people in your life that when you see their name pop up in your inbox, you're there, oh no. Ugh, I don't want to open that. I don't know how long it'll probably be another 10-page tirade, and I don't really want to wade through it and try to figure out what he's probably. So an email, a really good email, is formatted in such a way that when you open it, you you want to have a reputation such that when people see your name pop up in the inbox, they go, "Oh, good,
Hmm.
it's a note from Bob," and feel that way. Okay, so they
Right.
open your note with anticipation of something nice going to happen, and then the very first thing is the cardinal rule is, what you want to do is have it be formatted in such a way that the person, when they get that first pane, they open it up, open the note up, and they got the first pane, they see at the bottom of the page your signature block. And so they say, oh, good, that's all there is. If instead you just have text that goes all the way down the page and over the horizon to parts unknown, you're going to wade into that note with a feeling of, oh, how long is this going to be?
Hmm.
You have no idea how long it is. And so you're opening it. You're in a grumpy mood before you even get off the dime. So the rule is a good email should be able to be absorbed and read in 15 to 30 seconds.
Mm,
It should be all on one page. It should be formatted so that it's easy to digest. And yes, you can have attachments if you want, but you don't wax poetic in an email. You make it be very efficient for the reader. Those are a couple of the things that I stress.
No, it's huge. I know in this day and age, and I can't even explain why, but people like to send two, three sentences at a time, often on social media, for example. Someone will send two sentences, then two sentences, then two sentences, and then they send five messages, which is actually one paragraph. However, a lot of communications coming in bits and pieces these days. And I know personally, and I can't explain exactly why, but when I see like a four paragraph long brick of text without any spaces and they're long, complex, I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel stressed before I even read it.
You're
And
in a bad mood. You're absolutely not in a mood to absorb, to pay attention and absorb and have a reasoned response. So use bullets, make them short,
mm,
and make them easy to see, so that uh, people appreciate your notes when they come in.
it's a great tip. Use bullets, separates everything straight to the point, no filler words. This is awesome stuff, Bob. I'm going to have you on the show again. For sake of time, I want to move to the rapid fire round.
Okay.
It's simple, this or that questions, just to
Okay.
get to know you as a person a little bit better.
Sure.
And I like to start with coffee or tea.
Do I like coffee or tea?
Yeah, you,
Coffee.
you can always fill in the blank. It can be coffee, tea, or blanks. For example, beer or wine. A lot of
Martini
people.
would be all right.
There you go. What
Oh,
kind
and
of
I usually drink coffee in the morning.
Got it. Love it. Are you a cat person or a dog person?
Either.
What about favorite season? We're in the midst of winter.
Um, I generally like summer.
Cool. I mean, how could you not, right? Um, what about social media? Do you use social media? Can we follow you somewhere? Are you off it?
Holy cow, do I? Here's I plotted because I keep track. Okay, so here's my social media hit rate.
Okay.
Back in 2017, for the year, I got 20,000 hits to my blog. Last year, I got 140,000 hits to my blog.
Wow.
So do I? Yeah, I do. My blog is www.thetrustambassador.com.
www.thetrustambassador.com. And
Yep.
let's see that graph again because I love seeing that. That's the quintessential graph of progress upward. That's incredible.
That's
Where
3 years. Yeah.
So there's the trustambassador.com. Where else can we look you up and stay in touch? Where can I buy the book? Should I send you an email, a phone call? How do I get in touch if I want you to train my team?
Well, my email is. I'll give you my email and my website for my business. So my email is bwhipple at Leadergrow, all one word, leadergrow.com. www. Oh no, and my website is
Right.
www.leadergrow.com.
Got it. Got it. Bob, you covered a lot of basics today. I appreciate it. Is there anything that I should have asked you if I was a little bit more knowledgeable on, trust? Is there anything that I would have asked if I was higher level on the conversation?
Gosh, I don't know. There's one thing that I do that I'm kind of proud of, and that has helped me immensely, and I recommend it to others to do as well. And that is a process that I do on New Year's Eve every year. Every year, I rewrite this document here, which
Hmm.
is a document that indicates what my purpose is, what my vision is, what my mission is, my values, and the behaviors that I hold myself responsible for. This this page doesn't generally change too much year to year, but I do it. I rewrite the thing every New Year's Eve, because then identify the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 strategic things that I'm trying to accomplish in the next year. Okay. What are the 5 things that I'm trying to accomplish? How am I going to do that? And how am I going to measure myself at the end of the year? Okay. So I do that every year. It takes me all day to do it. Actually, this is the distilled version. The expanded version is 80 slides long, and it has all kinds of stuff. I have a whole process that I go through, and it allows me to plan my life. And my life is unfolding because I have planned it that way. What I'm doing is what I intend to do, and that allows me to not do other things that might be tempting, but that are taking me in a direction that might fragment. I'm very focused because I do that.
I love it. And, good strategy, good focus on what you want to accomplish ultimately leads to growth. This has been great. I would have taken more notes, but I wanted to be present with you here today. But I'm going to have to go back, re-listen, take additional notes. I hope everybody at home did as well. And Bob, it's been a pleasure. I appreciate your time today. It's been fun.
Thank you, Ben. It's always fun. I enjoy it. So thank you for doing it.
Thanks again. Thanks for listening to Rochester Business Connections. Don't forget to share this, rate, and comment on your favorite platform. You can also email me, ben@valbertmarketing.com. Let's connect soon. Until then, keep thriving, everyone.